1, 2, 3. This is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. And every week we talk about how to love ourselves, others, and higher nature, how to improve our life and our relationships, finances, careers, and especially nowadays in our health, both emotional and physical health. And we have a very fascinating guest today on the show, and she's coming from a long, far away place. This is Ann Gadd. She's an accredited Enneagram practitioner, author, holistic therapist, and artist, as well as a Reiki master, workshop facilitator, and journalist. She has written 21 books, including Sex and the Enneagram, which we'll talk about today. And she's coming to us from far away in Cape Town, South Africa. Hi, Ann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Avila. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course. Yeah. By the way, it's Avila. We do it in Spain, the Spain pronunciation.
Avila,
right?
I like that.
and your name sounds like you're glad. Are you a glad person, Ann?
I'm an Enneagram type 9, and we are on the happy spectrum of people, so probably yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that Enneagram, which is very fascinating. But Ann, right now there's something that's sweeping the world, and this thing called the coronavirus, which is very scary for a lot of people. And some people talk about what's called a dystopia, which is an undesirable, frightening future of isolation. And we hear about this in science fiction magazines and books. Do you think that's going to be happening, a dystopia?
It is happening. It's not like, will it be happening? But hopefully it won't be as long-lasting as the science fiction books have it as being.
So the idea that people are more isolated in some ways. Freud talked about the libido or the sex instinct, but also there's a death factor. He called it death instinct, but you could say the fear of death or the fear of maybe bad health. In some ways, it seems like it's a battle. People love on one side, fear on the other. How do you see that battle going on in people's minds? Because many times the coronavirus could be an internal thing as well. It could be a mental battle.
It could definitely be. I see the more present we are, the more, in tune we are with what is happening now, yes. I think the less fear we have. Yes. But the minute we step out of that, we move into fear. And I don't believe that, I think we all do it, but it's making ourselves conscious of when we are doing it so that we can bring ourselves back to that centered space.
Yes. Now, introvert people have always been kind of isolated in a way. They, order food in the house and they're kind of comfortable with that. But extroverts may be having a very hard time in this area. How do the personalities differ, do you think, in terms of dealing with the coronavirus? Are there some people that see it in a spiritual way or more of a practical way? How would you classify it?
Well, I think there's some, if I just use the Enneagrams as a framework, there's some people who are in certain Enneagram types, a 5
yes.
would be an example, who are delighted. I heard of a doctor today who said, oh, fantastic, I can read all the books, I can do all the studying, I can do all the stuff I never have time to do. He's delighted. But I also spoke to someone who's an Enneagram type 7, and they're saying, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We're caged in the house. How are we going to cope with it? So I think that the introverts are, in this particular set of circumstances,
yes.
are probably at an advantage.
Yes. And we use the numbers. I wrote a book called Love Types that actually was very popular using the Myers-Briggs. I think you talk about that also, the Jungian typology. And when you use these numbers, I think of, for example, when you say the 5, I think of the INT, the introverted intuitive thinker, or the scientist. And when you think of the spontaneous optimist, I think you call it the ENF, maybe the extroverted intuitive feeler. Do you see a parallel in these kind of types in terms of the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram?
They definitely are. I mean, people have done loads of research. Yes. Obviously, there are more of the Myers-Briggs types than there are of the essential Enneagram types. But they definitely found that there were loads of correspondences between the two. And in fact, in the book that I wrote, Sex and the Enneagrams, because there was very little research available on the Enneagrams in terms of our sexuality,
yes.
I had to draw a lot on Myers-Briggs and then relate it back or overlay it, if you like, to the Enneagrams.
Yes, definitely. Now, the idea of love and sex on one side and fear and death on the other side, do you think people are going to be afraid to have sex now or even have intimate relationships if this thing continues for a while?
Well, the popular theory, if you could go by Facebook, Twitter, and those, is that there will be this massive, increase of new births in 9 months' time because everyone's at home. They're calling them Corona kids and they're various names.
What's a positive outlook on that in some ways?
Well, I suppose if you suddenly find yourself not as busy as you normally are at work and you're trapped with one person, it's natural that you would get bored of, because here, I don't know if it's the same over there, but there are no sporting events. So the only sport you're going to watch on television is reruns
Wow.
old events.
Interesting. And they also say people fall in love more and even have more passion maybe in catastrophes, like emergency situations. There's more of an intensity. People want to affirm life. Sexuality is a part of that.
I think if you look back into the world wars, I think that was definitely the case. And I think that after the war, there was obviously a sudden increase in children born, particularly men. I think nature wants to balance itself. So in realizing that there were so many women widowed, nature kind of made more boy babies.
Yes.
So I think nature will be looking to balance things. And if there are prophets of doom or forecast many people dying, I think there will come a time when maybe there will be more births than usual.
Right. You and I may be similar. I think I'm one of the more optimistic types here. Obviously it's going to be a challenge and people need to take care of their health and protect themselves. But I see that a lot of people are coming together, like the whole world is now as one in this way to fight this situation. So in some ways it might even maybe create more unity in the future, perhaps. What do you think of that possibility?
I think it will create more unity, and I think also it will create, even in a family, more unity, because instead of like parents just being rushed and hassled and got to go to work, I don't know, once again, same there, but all the schools have closed here now. So children are having to come home.
Yes.
They will be looking for their parents to do things with them that maybe nobody ever had time to do before.
Exactly.
And if you even just take the time that you would have spent, you might still be working remotely, but you would have spent hours traveling in the car or whatever to get to work. So suddenly that time is going to be freed up. And I think you're going to find more quality time with children. I think couples are going to have more quality time. In other words, all the distractions that have kept us away from what's real have been removed. So it's going to be tough, but it's also going to be more real. And I think we're going to, whenever you're in danger of some sort, you tend to forget about all the niggly things that have been hassling you in a relationship. Oh, he didn't put the lid on the toothpaste. Well, hold it. He could actually get this thing tomorrow and he might have a problem with it. So
yes, definitely.
The toothpaste isn't for me anymore.
Exactly. I work a lot with trauma victims of serious accidents and even violent acts. And one of the things about trauma is that to recover, you need to find a meaning in it some way, someone to incorporate that into your life. So I had one case where this man was in a very serious accident, but he was a workaholic. But then being at home, recovering, he spent more time with his children, reconnected with his family, and he saw that in some ways the accident helped him do that. So it's kind of a way to find meaning. Now, let me ask you this. The Enneagram is very fascinating. I really honestly didn't know a lot about it, but I started reading your book. And apparently it was popularized by a mystic philosopher named Gurdjieff. And it talks about 9 personality types, but you say it's more than just personality. It's a blueprint to the universe to reach our fullest potential, kind of a psycho-spiritual system. Tell us a little bit about the overall aspect of the Enneagram. Why is it important to use?
If I were to give you a book that explained your life, not future, not whether you're going to marry Susie, what's going to happen, but if I were to explain your wounding, your ego construction, how you could, Ross Hudson talks about a passage to power, how you could move to be the fullest expression of yourself, and it was intrinsically related to you, that's an incredible, valuable piece of information to have. Because instead of scrambling around trying to figure these things out for yourself, you now have a guideline. And I think that's where the Enneagram is so amazing, because it goes way beyond the 9 personality types. That's only one small aspect of it. But it really gives you insight into when you're becoming disintegrated or less emotionally healthy, what to do to move forward. That's real information.
I see. Now, you mentioned the word passion. You talk about different elements of the Enneagram. And we think of passion normally as something you desire, something you love, but you also talk about it kind of as a wounding, or even the word vice is used. And I think, for example, one of the types, the Perfectionist, number 1, has the vice of passion or of anger, and they have the holy idea of perfection. How does that work, perfection and anger?
The word passion, I think it was Gurdjieff who originally used it. It's used in the old biblical sense. So it's not passion as in hot sex. It's passion as in what takes our focus away from what is really real.
Yes.
So a passion would be, if you take the anger of the type 1, it's where our focus lies. Nowadays, in modern language, passion has become to purely be associated with sex. But in the old way, the passion of Christ, it was the focus, where our focus goes to when we're stressed. that doesn't allow us to actually reach the potential of who we could be.
Okay. So the perfectionist, I mean, I think of perfectionism as also leading to frustration, because obviously you're not going to be perfect, so that can lead to anger. Is there a correlation there, or how does that work in terms of the...
Absolutely, because if I'm seeking perfection, basically I'm going to find a lot of imperfection in the world unless I'm incredibly healthy, in which case perfectionism exists. It's a present thing. But if the minute I start becoming less healthy, everything seems imperfect to me. Both myself and everyone else. And so that leads to anger. Why can't everyone just do things the right way? Then we wouldn't have these problems.
Yeah, and also criticism, too, I would imagine, right? They criticize others for not being perfect as well.
Absolutely. And themselves, by the way. I mean, there's one finger pointing at others, but three fingers pointing back, you know. So I have a dinner party and I really make a nice meal, but I criticize myself afterwards because the carrots were burnt, you know. So nothing is ever right. If I have sex, what distracts me from that good sex is my partner maybe took their undies and left them on the floor. I mean, how could they do that? That is terrible. Exactly. So my whole focus now becomes on the stain on the duvet, the undies on the floor, the picture that's not straight. And I'm not present with my partner because I'm fuming about these imperfect things.
I see. And then I think you said this number one personality or perfectionist wants to be good, but they fear being bad. And the way to resolve that, you said, is serenity. Is that like a calm acceptance that life is not perfect?
It's the calm acceptance that everything is perfect the way it is. There's no effort involved in my trying to battle on to make everyone do things the right way. What is perfect? So then I let go of resentment, I let go of anger, and I reach the stage of okayness. It's perfect the way it is.
That's pretty cool. But it seems like some of these types make it be kind of ingrained. I mean, how do you get a perfectionist to accept this perfection in everything as it is, since they're always striving to be perfect? Does it take years of therapy? Does it take reading a book? What do you think would turn the perfectionist into a happy person?
I think having understood the whole paradigm of a one, what you do is you let the person become aware, because up to now we behave unconsciously, but the minute you become aware that, hold it, I have this perfectionistic thing, I have this critical thing, I have this judgmental thing, I then start becoming aware of, oh wait, I'm becoming judgmental. So I then have a choice. Do I stand back and allow myself to be judgmental, or do I say, no, hold it, I don't want to be that person, and then become accepting? So growth becomes a conscious choice. Exactly. And then we can move to the point that we can stop ourselves from being judgmental. We can hold ourselves back. And then we can replace that with compassion.
Now, in the love types, Myers-Briggs topology, we say that, we can be a little bit of different types, but there is one strong preference. I think you say that you can see yourself maybe a little bit each of these, but you might have one overall. Now, I think you mentioned one time that you are more of the essential sweetheart, I guess the number 9. But you said you identified with, I think, number 7, which is the spontaneous optimist. Also, I see a little bit of general in you, the strong one, the number 8. So where do you see yourself? What is your primary and secondary type, if you have one?
If we were to divide the Enneagram into 3 basic things, so it's the gut, instinctual types, very present. It's the past-orientated types who shame is the issue and feeling. And then we move to the future-projected types where it's all about fear and thinking. So if one were to look at those 3 centers, one might say that I could be a 9 in the action type, which is my dominant type. But I feel like a 2 and I think like a 7.
Wow.
And then if you were to take your wings, which is the number on either side of you, I don't have a particularly strong 1 wing. You only have to look at my office and the clutter to realize that indeed that is true. But if you look on the 8 wing, I never had an 8 wing. In fact, I was always terrified of 8s. They're the boss, they're the controlling, they're the I'm in charge, they like confrontation. I was terrified of them. But actual fact, what is the saying by Jung? What if I find that the very part of myself I don't like is inside myself? That's not the exact quote, but it's along those lines. And I found that as I've got older, I found that voice in myself that's taken my 9 fence-sitting self. And I found that the power or the strength of that 8 wing. So in other words, I've been able to draw on that side of myself that's allowed me to say, no, hold it, this is not cool. This isn't what happens here. And, so in other words, that wing has allowed me to grow.
So you might be repelled. You might be repelled by a type, but you think it's part of your growth to accept maybe some of the other, sides that we don't really accept. So you think we need to integrate some of those other areas?
Absolutely. If we go back to our perfectionistic 1, they move to a 7. Now, 7s are spontaneous,
yes.
They're joyous, they're full in the moment, they're hedonists.
Yes.
So the 1, what's opposite to their rigidness, the perfectionist, it's got to be right, is the hedonistic self.
Oh, interesting.
So that's their shadow side. And there's a lot of that in the Enneagram. There's a lot of paradox in the Enneagram. And in fact, the Enneagram is all about paradox on one level. So it's about embracing that paradox.
Right. It's a very fascinating study, and I see a lot of psycho-spiritual elements. Now, you do talk about the triads, and I think you mentioned the body, heart, and head, and you talked about the body dealing with action, autonomy, and then the head is worry, the future, and then the heart is regret or shame, the past. But also you mentioned something called the Harmony and Triad, Karen Horney, who had moving toward, against, and away. And you also divide the 9 types into 3 categories each. I think you said compliant, asserting, and withdrawing. Why is that important to put them in those categories?
Well, because there are many different triads within the Enneagram, and because of the book being a book about sex,
yes.
That to me was very important, to see that there were some types who moved towards actively a partner, to get the partner, if you like.
Yes. Right.
And there were some who were more withdrawing from that partner. And the other types who believed that sex had something that you had to earn. Yes. So if you take a 1, if I'm a good boy or girl, I deserve sex. So I do certain things in order to be. I work hard, I earn a living, whatever it is I do. Right. So that was the umbrella of the book for those divisions, because I thought it was really important the way we approach sex.
I see. And then you mentioned the 3 types of love: maternal, which is the unconditional kind of giving. The paternal is more detached or authoritarian. And then the erotic, it's all about me and they want admiration. So almost like Freud's superego id in some ways. So how important is this part of it, to classify the types of love, which in each type?
I think if we understand that what our dominant type is, and remember the types can be stacked, but for instance, if I'm not, but let's say I'm a paternal type, I need to understand that's a sort of North Star love. It's a people to look up to me. And in love, I'm going to want a partner to follow me. Yes. I think as a maternal love, it's all going to be about the other person. Yes. Erotic love is all about me, myself, I. Yes. Maternal love is going to be what can I do to nurture the other.
Interesting. One interesting thing here now, love types, we give like a quiz and we have some questions. So I'm kind of curious, in the Enneagram, let's say we want to Enneagram type somebody. And I have Reggie here, my producer. Reggie is a young man who really hasn't had much success with women. He's only had a couple of dates in his life. He's been shy. Is there a way to help him, like, let's say, to figure out, first of all, figure out his Enneagram type? What would you ask him, Anne, to figure that out?
I would ask him if he has a man cave, if he enjoys his own company.
Reggie, answer that for her.
I have a room with books and movies, so I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, Anne, keep going.
Does he like to collect things? It could be old teaspoons, it could be old computers, some collection of some type. That would be an indication for me.
Reggie, what do you say?
Yeah, I do. I like collecting books, movies, and get them signed by the author, director, whoever.
Okay, good. So he is a man caver, a collector. What else, Anne, should we know about Reggie?
Does he find that when he's in a relationship, it's great in the beginning, and then he feels that person is asking too much. It's going to somehow take too much from him. More importantly,
you've never been in a relationship, have you? Or okay, let's say even can say a male friendship. Can we use that example?
Yeah, fine. Doesn't matter what takes you.
Are you afraid he's going to take too much? I think you told me one time. That he did that.
Boundaries are very important with me, and I just get worried people overstep them.
Okay, the answer is yes to that, Anne.
Okay, and then another thing I might ask him would be, does he believe in the saying, knowledge is power?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
So the more you know, the more okay you are, and you like to research stuff. So let's take Corona. Have you been on the internet researching what's happened in this country and all the different variations and stuff? So you know a lot about the subject.
Yeah, I've done that.
And the questions you're asking me, telling me you know a lot about Reggie already. How did you figure it out so quickly?
Well, it was I'm not going to say his type live here because I think that's unfair. But some of the things he said to me in terms of not really having a lot of relationships, and that immediately got me aware of certain things.
Okay, so let me say for you. So, Anne, he could be a type 5, a scientist, kind of an intellectual, logical kind of guy. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
That's where I was thinking, yes.
Okay, now, by the way, he is wearing glasses. You did mention that. He has little interest in the way he dresses, and he can put on some weight. Is that true, Reggie?
I think I put some interest in the way I dress, but yeah, I generally probably agree.
Okay, so you're more into the head than the body or emotions.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's your advice to Reggie? If he is a scientist or the, what you call this kind of person, what would you advise him for relationships?
In relationships, I mean, we always have to find that part of ourselves that we don't want to deal with. And for Reggie, it would be going out into the world because it's so much easier to stay at home and not engage. And so it's to actually...
Well, especially now, where's he going to go down now? And there's no restaurants, there's no nightlife.
Do you not have Tinder over there? Is there nothing like that?
Okay.
I don't know.
That's okay, dating apps, okay. So getting Reggie out of the house, but Anne, how do we get him out of his head? Because I think, is it the problem, Reggie, that you kind of think too much when you talk to a woman and it gets in your head?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what happens in that case?
Reggie will be trying to impress people with how much he knows, which doesn't always work.
Oh, okay.
So maybe what he could do, because remember, if we have three centers, head, heart, and our gut center, what Reggie's doing is he's living in his head center.
Yes.
So engaging with physicality and his heart center is where in other words, combining all three centers, not just focusing on the one, is where his growth is going to come from. So allowing his heart to open, i.e. engaging with people, making himself vulnerable, realizing that there's more to life than knowing, there's also feeling. And then engaging with his physicality, maybe getting out there, running, doing exercise, whatever. Engaging all those three centers would be my suggestion.
Wow. So Reggie, get a headband and start running and read poetry to ladies, I guess, right? Or something.
I can do that.
Yeah. Okay. So physical and emotional. That's good. Now, Anne, this is really interesting because I can see how this can really apply to dating, relationships, sex, a lot of things. And in terms of sex, I think you mentioned that the type number 3 is the one that is kind of a loyal kind of personality. Tell us a little bit about the number 3s.
No, I think you got them mixed up with 6.
Oh,
6 is on
okay.
the loyal type.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm thinking 6. Okay, so number 3 is the promoter, self-promoter. You said they're very confident. Yeah. They're like chameleons and all that. They can really seduce you that way. So tell us about that particular type.
Well, 3s deep down have this huge sense of shame. So what they do is they create this false sense of self in their heads. That's all successful, all achieving, and what they believe is that unless I do all these things, no one's going to love me. So they're constantly trying to be putting all their focus on their outer persona.
Yes.
So I need to do this, I need to achieve that, I need to do that, then I'll be worthy of love. But by the way, I'm a little afraid of love because that comes with potential rejection. So maybe I'll reject the other person first, then I won't have to feel the pain of rejection, and I'll throw myself into my work even harder, and I'll achieve even more. Yeah, and so that's the trap that 3s fall into.
Yes, you call these awesomely orgasmic. You say they talk about, I had 5 orgasms, wasn't I great? So sex is like a performance to them, and that's how they view it sometimes. And you also talk about their sexual frustration, which is my partner doesn't get that they never had sex this good. And you also talk about sexual presence, like how to resolve that by letting go of fear and need for control. So what does that mean, sexual presence? Because you have a category of that in each of the types.
Well, sexual presence is the same as being present. So what we were talking about earlier with the coronavirus, rather than going into the future, oh my God, what could happen and all this and those and millions of people and whatever, or going into the past, if only we hadn't done this or that, this would never have happened.
Yes.
Is being completely here with what is. So it's the monk falling down a cliff, being attacked by a tiger, and as he falls, he grabs this branch, and on that branch was a strawberry, and he eats and enjoys that strawberry. So he's completely involved in that moment of enjoying the strawberry. He's not worried about falling to his death below or the tiger facing him above. That's what I'm meaning by presence.
I see. Because, in problems with potency, men that have erection problems, they teach them non-demand touching. So they stop focusing so much on the performance and more on the process of, the sensuality. Is this something important for these 3s? If they get too performance-oriented in sex, they may not be able to enjoy it. So what's your advice to them?
Absolutely. Sadly, what a lot of 3s do when they realize maybe they have an erectile dysfunction or they have a premature ejaculation or something like that, it becomes so stressful that they would rather than not engage with sex or even be in a relationship rather than the humiliation of in their minds, failing.
That makes sense. And then you said that each type has something that attracts you to them. And I think they're very charismatic and exciting, the threes. And then to win their heart, I guess, to be attracted to them, you need to also tap into their desires. So how do you win the heart of a three?
Just simply ask them about their business. Ask them about their job, what achievements are. It's easy. It's not difficult. And they'll happily tell you all about, I did this and I was the sportsman of the year here, or the female top of the whatever there.
They like to brag. They're a little bit of braggers, you're saying.
Look, I'm talking. They're different, as I said earlier. They're different levels of health with each number, and I'm very much targeting here the middle level of health, the average person.
Okay.
At their most healthiest, no, they're not going to be doing that. They're actually going to be really achieving a lot for the greater good of mankind.
I see.
But at their lower levels, sure, they're the braggers of the world. They're the
narcissist, maybe.
I need to do
exactly.
Yeah. Well, possibly, and sevens as well do tend to head that direction if they're not healthy.
I see. So then we have the number ones, or I call them the accountants, or you call them perfectionistic. We have the self-promoters, 3. Now we skipped over the poor caretakers, the number 2s, and they probably get overlooked a lot too. The ones that give you all that affection and all that. So tell us a little bit about these caretaker number 2 types.
2s believe that sex must be earned. So what they do is they try to be like, what is she, my partner? What is she or he? What do they most want? And they try to second guess your needs.
Yes.
Because they want to give to you. Because the more they give to you, then you surely won't leave the relationship. But they call it a kind of giving to get. So behind that, whatever it is for you, is this often unrecognized desire of they're wanting it back. So if you date a 2, they will very quickly find out the kind of shower gel you like. They'll know exactly what you like for breakfast in the morning. I mean, they'll try to fulfill your every need in order to earn your affection.
Yes. And you said that for their presence, they need to acknowledge their own needs. They need to realize that they can receive as well. It's important for them.
Needs? What needs?
What needs?
2s often deny that they have any needs. Me? And that's where their pride comes in. I don't have needs. I'm beyond needs. It's all about you.
Right.
So getting to realize that they, in fact, do have needs, and that, in fact, they get quite angry when those needs aren't met.
Yes.
Is part of their journey or passage in life.
I see. Now, we get to, I think, the number 4s, which I look at them as like intuitive feelers and the Myers-Briggs, the artists, the romantic types. And you also have a cool thing where you talk about, like, even appearance-wise, you might see these people, they might have pink streaks in their hair. They might be hipsters, vegan, things like that. Kind of like a very unique, almost maybe eccentric individuals. So tell us about the romantic artist, this number 4 type.
4s are looking for the lost part of themselves, that piece that they feel will complete them.
Yes.
And yet everyone else in the world seems to have it better. Every other one's relationship is better than their relationship. So they play this elusive game of wanting to appear exotic and something that you would want to go after, and then they withdraw, and then you want to go after them again. And so there's this push-pull kind of feeling in the relationship with the 4. But the 4s are the only types that really seem to have relationships with each other.
Oh, really?
But there's this great need to find that person who truly gets me. Yes. On a deep level. 4s do not do superficiality in any shape or form. They want intensity. They want emotions with the volume turned up.
I see.
So they're looking for someone else who gets that in them.
That makes sense. I call it the meaning seekers, or the NF temperament. And it seems like those individuals like the idea of soulmates, finding your other half, and they're always looking for that. But I think you advise them to embrace reality instead of always fantasizing about that ideal person. But can they really do that? Can an intuitive feeling or this kind of person really embrace reality? Or is that part of their makeup, that they want the imagination?
The thing about 4s is they play everything that's happening to them now through the history of the past. So they might be in bed with you having sex, but there's a part of them that's thinking, oh, wow, this piece of music that's playing now reminds me so much of when I was in bed 15 years ago with so-and-so.
Okay.
And that's what takes them away from being present, this feeling that there's always this part that's missing that I need to find that fulfill.
I see. So that's kind of regret in a way. They're always kind of regretting, or they should have done something different, maybe, looking at the past. So you want to get them to look in the present, I guess, right? To see the moment as it is.
Yeah, you want to get them to appreciate all that they have now. So yes, this partner that I have now may not have the looks of a partner 20 years ago, or may not be this or may not. But actual fact, right now they're the most amazing partner. And you want to get them to appreciate what they have, not what they feel is missing.
That's pretty cool. That's gratitude. I wrote a book called The Three Secrets of Happiness, and the secrets are forgiveness, which is past, gratitude is present, and optimism is future. So I can see that some of these types have some of these elements, or can have them. And the other thing is, so we talked about the scientist, I think the number 5. Now the number 6, I look at him as kind of the traditionalist, the sensing judger, and the Myers-Briggs. You call it the loyal, safe lover, who's very loyal and will be with you through all times. So that sounds perfect. Well, is there anything wrong with having that safe, loyal lover?
No, it's not, except they're half expecting to leave them because trust is a big issue for them.
Yes.
So how much can I trust this partner of mine, or are they about to dump me, or that thing that they just said, should I read something into that? Does that mean something? So they're constantly trying to sort of think what could possibly go wrong, as opposed to enjoying what is.
I see. That's it. They're very cautious. So they're going to wash their hands 100 times instead of 10 times a day. Or they're going to look at
very much so.
Stuff like that.
Condom break. Yeah, will I pick up an STD from this relationship? I mean, how many other people have they slept with before? I wonder what illnesses they might have had. All this stuff is going to play through their heads.
I see. Somehow, I guess you say to win their heart, you got to have them, get them to trust you, allay their fears or concerns. And how do you do that, though? How do you get people to trust you if they're suspicious?
If they feel that it's us as a couple against the world, you'll have their loyalty to them is their aphrodisiac. So if they feel that you're there for them, that you're not going to go and have it off with the next door neighbor or whatever, you've got their back. They will be with you through thick and thin, and they will support you and pay for you to go to college, do whatever, as long as they feel that you're pulling that responsibility with them.
Exactly. So you said us against the world. And you said they'll love you not just for your looks or your money or whatever else, but just for you. So they are, you say, very authentic people in a way?
Authentic from the point of view that they see more value in loyalty than perhaps necessarily only in physical looks.
Okay, so they're not going to go to the next person just because they have a better this or a better that. They're more likely to commit to you. But also they want commitment as well. I think that's what they require as well. Loyalty and commitment.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then because God has a sense of humor, they often get attracted to people whose commitment is an issue.
I see. So we see that sometimes people choose the bad boys or the bad girls, or as they call them, that are not, their type, and they're more exciting maybe in the beginning, but then later on they suffer as a result because they don't offer what they have. What do you think that is? Why are people self-sabotaging in relationships, picking people that are totally wrong for them?
Well, I think we go for our shadows, and because whatever's in our shadow we haven't acknowledged within ourselves, we become fascinated with it in another person, and then follow that shadow side of ourselves. But later on in the relationship, perhaps say, but you're not the person I thought I married, or whatever, because we're having to deal with that within ourselves.
Exactly. Now, then we get to the number 7s. I see these as kind of a spontaneous, enthusiastic, kind of like the ENFP and the Myers-Briggs, the extroverted, intuitive, feeling spontaneous. Now, these people you say are very fun, joyful, kind of like always child-oriented in terms of their personality, fun-loving. But the issue with them, I think you said that they need space, or they can get bored also at the same time. So what do we know about these individuals, these spontaneous enthusiasts?
7s want the world to be an amazing place. They don't want you to impact on their freedom in any way. So having to remain housebound for this COVID-19 thing is going to be very hard for them. They They want to be free. They don't want anyone imposing limits on them. And joy is a huge issue.
So they're probably pissed off right now. These people are probably angry right now. They can't go out and have fun and party or anything, these individuals. And also you mentioned sexual sobriety. They need to go on a sexual diet, like not have sex for a period of time?
I think the sevens of the world will hate me for that, but I think it's not necessarily not having sex, but it's actually learning to be fully appreciative of the sex you are having, than always wanting something new and exciting.
Yes.
And sevens are very afraid of being bored.
Yes.
And so in a sexual term, that means that that being said, I know a lot of sevens who are in very serious relationships and have been for a long time. But there is that part of them that's going to be constantly looking for stimulus. Even if it's not in the bedroom, they're going to be looking for it in their jobs or social lives or whatever.
I see. Now, then we come to the 8. You call this the lusty boss, lusty lover who's larger than life, very dominant personality. Even they like maybe BDSM in the bedroom. They walk in the room, they're very powerful, and they want you to walk with fire. So tell us about this boss person.
They were usually often people who had to assume responsibility beyond their years when they were kids, so they had to protect other children, other siblings, or maybe protect a mother or whatever. So they missed out on that childhood part, and they learned safety in being in control and in charge. And so they always want to be in control and in charge, and they want that intensity that comes with it. So you talk about walking into the fire. They want you to walk into the fire with them. They want you to meet them head on. And that's when lusty sort of sex happens, because lust is their passion. They see something, they want it, they go after it, irrespective of the consequences.
I see.
So it makes them very alive, vital. Anger is an issue with them. They're not afraid to show it.
I see. So I can think of a courtroom lawyer, some kind of strong politician, maybe a strong individual in the boardroom. And you said that you can smell their power.
I think one in your country, no names mentioned,
So you can smell their power, and you said that they often use straight talk. Like, what are the chances I get to see you naked tonight? They would actually say that to you in your face.
They would, because they're not afraid of the consequences, and they're not afraid particularly of rejection. They're that confident.
I see. But the problem is, you said that they want more sex than their partner, and their partner may withdraw, like they may be overwhelmed by this person. So how do they become, do they need to think that the other person is like that, is as good as them? Because they think they're superior in some ways. What is the way to help them?
I think they often are attracted to, if it's a man, a 6 woman. If it's a 8 woman, very often 9 men. Mm-hmm. And those people are looking for security and safety with this challenger, this boss, this 8 person.
Right.
Which means that they can sometimes get frustrated with that person because they want someone to challenge them head on. Instead, they've got somebody who's complying with them. Don't like that. So, they might initially, but in time it becomes frustrating for them.
I see. Now, you mentioned a 8 woman, which is kind of the boss woman with 9 nurturing men. We had John Gray on the show. You may have heard of him with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And, he wrote a book recently about Beyond Mars and Venus, how women are becoming more masculine energy and men more female energy. You've heard the yin and yang idea. So what do you think? Can that work? Can a very strong masculine energy woman do well with a more feminine submissive man? Can that work out if they respect each other?
I've known very successful relationships of 8 women with 9 men.
Yes.
And, it seems to work because the 9 man provides that kind of nurturing comfort, the place where the actual 8 person can allow their vulnerability to emerge.
Yes.
And so that works really well because deep down they are like little marshmallows underneath all that brusqueness.
I see.
And
okay, but the key is, I think, to respect each other's style, because if he doesn't respect her, he's going to see her as very dominating, and she's going to think that he's not really a man in some ways if she doesn't respect his style. So do you find that later in the relationship, does that come up if they don't have that respect toward each other's energies?
It would certainly help if the man had an 8 wing, because then he is able to meet her on that level.
I see.
Maybe more difficult if he had a 1 wing.
Yes.
But, as I say, one has to remember that behind this very brusque, perhaps aggressive, confrontational, no-nonsense person. There is a warm-hearted, generous, soft person that then meet that 9.
I see what you're saying. So you have to look within the personalities that we don't see. And finally, Anne, we come, I guess, to the most wonderful of all, which is the 9. This is central, sweetheart, peacemaking, mediator, harmonious. And by the way, that's you, Anne, as well. So.
Well, now that you mention it,
I thought I'd build you up a little bit and get you in there, right? So this. Are you really 100% sweet and nice, Anne? Are you 100% 9?
I would love to say glibly, oh, yes, of course. But you have to realize that 9's hidden thing is anger. So 9s are what? Be angry.
Really?
So they can be very stubborn. Passive aggressiveness can show up. So all is not completely harmonious.
But wait a minute, Anne, why are you angry with your wonderful husband? Isn't he like a 3 or something like that, or one of those other types?
No, he's a 5. He's a 5.
He's a 5. Okay, so he's the intellect. He's like a Reggie type, very intellectual and brainy in a certain way. So why would you be angry at him if he doesn't show his emotions, or what makes you angry?
Because he doesn't show his emotions, because it's all thoughts, not feelings. And because he'll go away and think about something, and I'm wanting immediacy. I'm one of the gut types. I want what is the answer now? And he's disappeared off to his man cave to consider the options, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me. At the same time, for him, I'm very frustrating, because as a 9, if something comes along that I don't particularly like, 9s are like ostriches. We're very good at digging holes and like sticking our heads in the sand. And what, coronavirus? No, it'll all be fine. We'll just be cool and happy. So there's lessons for all of us to learn.
I see. Now, you said the sexual frustration is don't keep asking me what position I like. What does that mean? That you don't want to say what you want in the relationship sexually?
Okay, this is not me. Okay, we're not talking.
Well, the 9s, let's say.
Let's move it away. 9s in general. Because 9s battle to express an opinion. They go along with everyone else's opinion. You want it this way? Sure. You want it that way? Yeah, that's great for me, honey. Don't worry. So I think what a partner for 9 can do is to draw them out of themselves and get them to the point that they actually, because most of the time they're not aware that they're angry, they're not aware of the stuff. So actually getting them to be able to verbalize, that actually was nice, or, that didn't work for me. And allowing them the space to be able to voice that.
But is a 9 angry because they're like stifling themselves and they feel frustrated that they can't say things, or why are they angry?
They're angry because they're ignored, because they go along, it's along. So in other words, if you go to a movie house and you're the person, like I do, you open the door for everyone else to get through, and everyone else that's been watching the movie sort of pushes past you, and at some point you're thinking, well, when is anyone going to realize I'm holding the door open here and have been for the last few people? So the mistake with 9s is to overlook them, although they invite you to do that.
I see. Because in my book, Love Types, I talk about like a caretaker that gives so much love, but they don't get appreciation back. Eventually, they keep it inside, but they blow up, and they might leave without warning, or get really angry. And people are surprised. They say, "Oh, you're such a nice, easygoing person." Is that similar to the 9? Do they kind of build it up and then explode at some point?
Yes, many 9s do. Many 9s sort of keep the anger in, and then it explodes. But of course, they're very afraid of not being part of the mothership. So anger might mean that then if they explode, that they will kind of disconnect from those around them. So it becomes quite traumatic for them.
I see.
But, it's that in terms of anger. And it's also the fact that 9s tend to do a lot for other people. And whilst they're not like 2s in asking for reciprocation, at times you need some form of acknowledgement.
I see what you're saying. Now, and the other thing is, here where we maybe differ a little bit. In Love Types, we often look at similar types in terms of the deep preferences and values that do better in the long run. And I know you talk about complementary or opposites may do well as well. Opposites may attract. So I'm kind of curious as to your philosophy on that, because I know you said the 4s do well together, the what I call the NFs, intuitive feelers. But then you mentioned the 8 boss woman with a romantic pleasing man, number 9. So what's your take on that? Should we be similar or opposites in our Enneagram types in love?
I think, as I said, the Enneagram is a paradox. So you're always going to find an aspect of yourself that's a paradox of the type you're with.
Yes.
Some types do tend to get on better, but I think at the end of the day, it's not so much the type you are,
yes,
but far more how healthy you are emotionally within your type.
Yes.
And essentially, we are all of the types. So we all have essentially parts of different types within us.
Yes.
But I think we become more fragmented the more unhealthy we become. And so it's harder to acknowledge those connections, and we see only differences.
Right. And, some of the authors talk about how we choose people like our parents or similar unconsciously. So I'm kind of curious. You picked a man that's very intellectual. Was either your dad or mom like that? Did you have any affinity for intellectual people? We use the word sapiophile. You may have heard sapiophile. You're attracted to brains. Brains are sexy. How did you find that in your husband? Are you a sapiophile yourself, Anne?
Perhaps within myself, but not in my parents. I think my dad was a 9, my mum is a 1.
Oh, okay.
So,
wow.
No. I think perhaps I didn't want to be like a 1, so maybe I moved away from that.
So what attracted you to your 5 husband? He's the brainy, logical guy, it sounds like. Did you have an intellect affinity?
Yeah, I think that there is that. I think there's that meeting of minds. I think we can, when you're married to a 5, you get woken up in the morning with tea. That's great. But you also get told exactly what's happening politically in every country.
Of course.
By the time you get to bed, you don't need to read a newspaper. You know all that stuff now.
That's pretty cool.
That's how they show their affection, if you like.
That's true. Reggie, our producer, he loves politics. He's always talking about all these different political things. So it's a very brainy relationship. So is that something that the 9s like sometimes? Someone who has that knowledge is power idea?
9s merge with other types. So if a 9 is with a 5, they certainly like everything intellectual. But if a 9 was with a 4, they would love everything romantic. If a 9 was with a 3, they'd access that ambitious part of themselves. So I think part of a 9's journey is to realize that that's what they do and find themselves, not through other people.
Wow, interesting. So 9s are pretty cool people, it sounds like, right, Anne?
Oh, we are wonderful. Absolutely.
That's great. And, there's something that I like it. You said a beautiful phrase in one of your shows. You said something like, a 2 and an 8 do well because 2 is love, and then 8 is power. And you said you can't have true love without power, and you can't have true power without love. Tell us more about that. That's kind of a cool phrase.
I think the lines between, if you imagine the Enneagram symbol, for those of you who don't know it, it's like this round circle with the triangle and then hexad, and there are little points around the edges that represent the different types. But what we often fail to do is to look at the lines between the types. So in this instance, there's a line joining a 2 and an 8. And that line isn't just there because, hey, the guy liked doing great logos. The line is there for a purpose, and it's to show that if an 8 is all about power and courage, and a 2 is all about love, that's a gift they potentially could bring to the world.
Yes.
That in fact, in joining those 2 types, there can be no true love that is not powerful, and there can be no power that doesn't encompass love.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I really love this because it taps into the work I do with the personality types, love types, and Myers-Briggs. But also, it really shows people to really accept who they are and to love themselves. That's one of our key elements here at Love University, is loving yourself, others, and a higher nature, which could be a spiritual aspect. But many times people try to change themselves, and they're not happy with themselves, and they get down on themselves. When they have power, they have a great talent, and they're all unique. So really, I'm grateful to you, Anne, for being here today and expressing this to us. Where can people hear more about you? Tell us if you have books or websites. Tell us about your things.
All right, my website is www.enneagrams, and that's spelled ENNEAGRAMS, and then 9 is in numerical 9, paths, PAWTHS.com. So Enneagram9paths.com. You can sign up there. I send out a newsletter. where I talk about the various types and aspects and stuff like that. And then my books on the Enneagrams are, the one that's just come out is Sex and the Enneagrams, which looks at the 9 different personality types and how they engage sexually and how they can have more fulfilling relationships. And then the other book is The Enneagram of Eating, which is more about how Enneagram types affect our diet, our exercise choices, our addictions, and what diets, exercises, and stuff would probably most work for our types.
Wow. Eat, love, pray, sex. You got it almost all covered here, it sounds like. Sure, for the prayer part. Now very briefly, I'm kind of curious, if I tell you the types, can you tell me what's your best way to deal with the coronavirus?
Well, the one is immediately going to want to go into organization.
Okay, let's see.
And try and get everything sorted and organized, and maybe probably thinking about lists of what they need to stock up with and things like that. They're going to find safety in that.
Yes. Okay. And the twos, the caretakers.
Twos are going to look more into how can I help others. What can I buy and give to other people that'll make their passage through this difficult time easier?
Okay. Now, self-promoters, number 3, do they want to make money out of this, or what is their thing?
If 3 is a healthy promoter, they're going to work tirelessly to help benefit the rest of the world. They're great organizers. They make things happen. Right. So they're going to work on that level. If they're not healthy, they're going to be finding ways that they're going to be annoyed because it's going to interfere with the project they're working on and their potential for kudos in that project and so on.
I see. How about the number 4, the romantic artists?
They're going to be thinking, the pain, the suffering we all have to go through.
So I'm going to write a poem about it, write a song or something, or a book about this.
They're going to be expressing themselves deeply and feeling on a deeply compassionate level, feeling the pain that everyone else around them is experiencing. And they might even fall into a dark sort of place where they see many of the prophecies and stuff and the predicted happening. The way to get themselves out of that is to be creative, to write that poem, do whatever.
Yes. Right. I think you told me you're writing something too, aren't you, Anne?
I am. I decided after 27 books I was going to do my first novel.
Wow.
And
that's pretty cool.
Cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And
I love it.
Talk about hitting the sand. It's brilliant. I don't think about anything. But
excellent. Now, then we have the people, we need these people to work hard, the 5 scientists. What do the scientists need to do now?
They're going to be finding out every single piece of research and data on coronavirus.
Exactly.
And they're going to be great resources for people to go to find out stuff. If you're too kind of, I was going to use the word idle, but maybe not as interested as a 5 is, they're going to be the ones who are going to be keeping abreast of all the scientific developments and the way to go and coming up with the theory that maybe if we approach it from this angle, the vaccines and so on, they're going to be that person.
Definitely. And then the number 6, the loyal, safe lover types. What are they going to be doing?
Well, 6s, it's going to be their worst nightmare. I mean, they're going to be trying to stock up with everything. They're going to be concerned about everything that could go wrong.
Yes.
If they say it's
I know a couple
double,
of those already. Yes.
They're going to be quadrupling it. It's going to be a really terrifying place for them to go. If they can allow themselves to breathe deeply and they can look at it as now I'm facing my worst nightmare. And this is an opportunity for me to grow beyond that fear, to actually be present, to use all the meditation practices that I've been reading about and practicing for years, to actually center myself and to not allow myself to go into panic and terror, and to use that compassion because 6s are very, they can walk in another man's shoes, so they can really see how someone else might be feeling, and to channel that energy into that as opposed to sinking into fear.
Now, the spontaneous optimists, the 7s, are they going to say, hey, man, I can help the world through this in some way, we can all unite as friends, or what is their way of looking at it?
I spoke to a 7 today. She said, I've organized loads of wine. It's arriving. I'll be cool.
Okay.
And I'm, maybe that's cool, but maybe that's not. So what 7s can do is they can use their optimism. To actually, and the enthusiasm to allow people to maybe see that it doesn't have to be this bad. So that they can lift people up out of the doldrums, out of the scared places they are, although they themselves also fear numbers. But in fact, they can move to a place of true presence, of true appreciating the moment that they're in and the joy in it.
Then you have the lusty generals, number 8. You call them very powerful types. How about those guys?
They were all in the shops today. You could see them. They've never been into a grocery shop in their lives, but they were there today. They were going to organize that there would be enough food for the troops. You could see them as they marched sort of authoritatively around the shops, kind of grabbing the toilet paper and all that.
Okay. And finally, the Central Sweethearts, number 9s, are they doing podcasts and talking about spirituality, or what are they doing today?
They can bring peace to the world. They can bring calmness. They can take that essence within themselves that actually calms everyone down. That's their gift that they can bring. And sorry, going back to the 8s very quickly, 8s are great in uplifting victims. So they can be hugely great in assisting those who are victimized by the situation.
Perfect. Well, and again, it's been a wonderful pleasure. We're very happy that you were on here today with us, and I send you a lot of love and energy to your area, South Africa, that everyone is going to be okay and healed out there. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. And ditto to the USA as well.
Thank you. So Anna was a very lovely guest. She gave us a lot of wonderful insight information about the Enneagram and sex, love, even the current coronavirus crisis, how to be happier and healthier. And what I like the most about her is that she really brings a kind presence to the world through her work. And the idea that all of us are one in many ways. We live in different countries, we have different physical appearance, economic status, emotional backgrounds, but all of us are human beings. We still love, we learn, we grow, and we want the best for ourselves and our families, and our communities, and our countries. So the idea that Love University can bring people together, and this is one of our big missions to help eradicate loneliness, and now to help eradicate the fear that comes when you're not connected to people. And sometimes people in this current situation will feel disconnected, but we can always say, I can connect with myself, with others in a certain way, and also with my higher nature, my higher power, whatever that may be, God, spirituality, nature. So again, Love University students, regardless of what type you are, in the Enneagram or in the love types, Myers-Briggs, Jungian types, the key is to embrace who you are, accept yourself, love yourself. Realize that you have a gift that you've been given. In Spanish, we call it don or don divino, a great talent. Maybe it's writing, teaching, science, working with your hands, caretaking, helping other people. Whatever it is, you can bring that to a current situation in life, the current crisis, but also in the future to help others grow as you help yourself grow. So until next time, Love University students, if you want to reach us at 310-226-8090, loveuniversity.love, loveuniversitylove@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook at Love University Podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Love Letter U Podcast. Until next time, Love University students, please put away your notepads, your notebooks, your iPads, your pens, and pencils. Love University is now dismissed. Dr. Avila.